Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Go With Your Gut podcast. I am your host, Lauren Dreyer, and today we are talking about how old habits die hard. And I think it's very interesting when we have some bigger changes depending on the season and what you're going through, because when we have big changes, a lot of times we are very resistant to the change, and regardless of if you like change, because usually that is the only certain thing, is that things are changing. But what happens when we're going through a big change is we get stressed, right? We get stressed because things are changing. Our routine gets thrown off. We have to cope with the stresses of changing, people coming in and out of our lives, maybe routines getting super thrown off, and we have to figure it out. We have to flex with it. And that reminded me of the fact that when we get stressed, when we have all these big changes going on, what happens is that we fall back into old habits. And a lot of times that means potentially getting rid of like an exercise routine, because for some reason that just happens to be something that people get rid of easy. And um, not exercising, maybe we overreact to things. Maybe we stress eat. Maybe we overeat. Those are some kind of physical things that we fall back into. What makes us comfortable. We eat comfort foods. We eat things that are not great for our bodies. We also, I tend to see a lot of people, including myself, become defensive because maybe we're not sure about what's going on. We get a little bit insecure in the unknown because we have absolutely no idea what's going on. We don't know what is changing. We don't know what's going to happen. All we know is that we have to keep doing things, and we have to keep doing whatever we can to move forward. And a lot of times those are things that we don't have control over. We project our insecurities onto others a lot, but we tend to fall back into those habits when we are going through changes. We get overwhelmed, we get angry, we do a lot of different things depending on who you are. We also tend to put up a wall when getting feedback over what's going on. And some people you're more than happy to get feedback from, and others, if you're like me, not so much, because for whatever reason, you're just like, you have no idea what you're talking about. You have no idea what's going on with me, and we just don't really want to hear what they have to say. So we put a wall up. And this has been like a thing lately, and I've seen a lot of people doing this, is a lot of times to help those insecurities, want to be heard. We want somebody to give us a little bit of affirmation, confirmation that things will be okay. And a lot of times we have to use our support system. We have to talk things through. We kind of go into that survival mode when things are changing and we don't have control over much, if anything, let's be honest. So something that I have learned is that if we want to be heard by others, then we have to extend the same courtesy. And this is definitely for me a old habits that die hard, because there's a lot of people in our lives, in our support system, um, all around that we don't want to listen to, regardless of the relationship, regardless of who they are. And we tend to get feedback from somebody if, we're stressed. And the first thing we want to say is, I don't do that. I'm not doing that. Absolutely not. And then we throw out every excuse under the sun as to why we're doing this, um, why we're not the problem, why this needs to change. And when we don't really have to do that, do we? Because usually I feel like when we start throwing out excuses, it's because we're insecure about something and we can't control it. So we want to give every excuse in the book as to why um, we're not the problem and something else needs to change. And if we want, no matter who it is, somebody else to listen to us, and if we want to change those old habits of putting up the walls, of being defensive, of, I don't know, the support system not working, or not giving somebody a chance to be helpful when honestly you just kind of chalk it up and say they're not going to be helpful. I don't want their feedback. So what would happen if, no matter who it is, you receive feedback, and instead of completely reacting to it, take a slight pause and say, okay, I hear what you're saying, and you don't have to take every piece of their feedback for, you don't have to take all of it seriously. You can say, well, okay, I agree with this part. I see where you're coming from. And then you can let everything else roll right off. I find that a lot of times, even if people don't know the whole story about what's going on, or why we're stressed, why we're doing something, and we get so wrapped up um, into that stress, into that overwhelm, into that survival mode of going through the change, that we don't tend to take into consideration how it's affecting everybody else. We know that we're stressed, and we tend to snap. We tend to maybe get worked up. Our body goes into fight mode because we got all those chemicals going on that are literally um, putting us onto defense mechanism, right? Our defense mode, the fight or the shut down mode, or um, whatever you do, honestly. So think about the fact of when somebody, no matter who it is, in your family, somebody you work with, a friend, whoever, if it's somebody that you don't necessarily want the advice from, if you ever want them to listen to something that you have to say, I would advise listening to what they have to say and take into consideration what they're trying to tell you, maybe what they see from the outside, not being in your head and wrapped up in the moment, and let them see that you heard what they're saying. And there will be plenty of opportunities to say, I understand where you're coming from. I also need you to hear that this is where I'm at. This is all the things I have going on. And maybe even say, these are the things that I need from you. These are the things that you could help to take away some of those stressors, some of those things on my plate. And maybe we can move through this just a little bit easier. There's people who you don't work great with, whether it be a communication style, whether it be a work style, or maybe you just don't get along with the person. And think about the fact that they may still have feedback because maybe there's somebody else who is a lot like them that um, maybe it would help with that. Or we tend to not want to hear things that are opportunities to improve from things that we're insecure about. Um, if you're like me and somebody gives you some feedback of, um, this is what I see, this is what's going on, and it's something that I'm already insecure about, or um, maybe I'm projecting onto somebody because it's something that I either haven't figured out yet, maybe again, I'm insecure about it, or I don't know, I don't know how to control it the way that I want to control it. And I used to step back super fast. And for a long time, I got a lot better at that. But all of those old habits that are kind of like, okay, I quit doing that. It is crazy how fast all those habits sneak back in. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I am doing this again. And it took somebody on the outside to actually point out that I'm doing, somebody that doesn't care if I'm mad at them, but is having trouble dealing with us and maybe the situation, or um, maybe there's some tension somewhere that needs to be worked through. But I find that we don't always realize when those old habits creep right back in, and all of a sudden you find yourself stress eating, not doing the things that make your body and mind feel good, and you slip back into some of those mental habits that don't really serve you. And honestly, once they come to light, it's really not a hard fix, but you have to wrap your head around the fact that maybe that other person is correct. Maybe you got back into that habit and somebody just needed to bring you back down to ground level so that you could course correct again. But it's not always easy to hear the things from the people that you don't want to hear it from, and to hear that you need to course correct a little bit and you need to cut those old habits again to get back to level ground, instead of walking around on eggshells and feeling like you're always ready to snap, because all of those things combined will have physical and they'll have physical impacts, but they'll also affect the energy that you have to give everybody who needs it throughout your day. Um, it'll leave you mentally exhausted, and then you're not good for anybody. So when I say this, it is because I see this in a lot of different people, including myself, because every once in a while, my anxiety goes absolutely through the roof, and I know why it did that, but I don't necessarily know how to bring it back down without voicing why, and then acknowledging that, yeah, I fell back into some of these habits that I really don't like, and then asking for the help and saying, here's what needs to happen, here's where I need to go, and then letting yourself off the hook and get back to where you need to be. It's a lot easier to do that once you can bring yourself back to ground level and not beat yourself up about it, but realize that whoever is telling you these things or bringing it to your attention may have a point. But if you're willing to listen to what they have to say, the next time that you need you need to hear something, or you need them to hear something, that's what I'm trying to say. The next time that you need them to hear something, I bet they'll be a lot more receptive to what they and you both have to say, because you were willing to take the first step. So go with your gut. Listen to those people. You don't always have to take all of their advice. You can take grains of it and let the rest of it fall down and not have to worry about it. And be careful not to internalize the things that people tell you, because I also do that. I used to internalize the things that people told me all the time, and I took it to heart instead of saying, some of these things may also be your insecurities. This is probably true, but this other piece I know is not. Trust your gut on what's true and what not. Trust your gut on where you need to go, but also give people a chance to help you out if you ever want them to listen to you. I hope this was helpful. I hope this changed some perspectives and maybe brought you back down to level ground if you needed it. As always, go with your gut and then keep going.